For my 30th birthday, my family flew to Miami without me, and my father called me a clown when I asked why. He said they didn't want to waste time on me, so I made one phone call to my lawyer, set a trap they never saw coming, and waited. 9 days later, their entire world collapsed. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The silence of the house was the first thing that felt wrong. It was 7:00 a.m. on a Tuesday, the day of my 30th birthday, and the house was utterly still. Usually, by this time, I could hear the expensive rumble of the espresso machine my mother, Jennifer, insisted was a vital necessity, or the bass thumping from my sister Victoria's room as she curated her morning vibe for her non-existent blog followers. This morning, there was nothing, just the sterile, hollow echo of a house that felt too big for one person. I was already feeling fragile. The week before, my studio's biggest launch to date had been hit by a denial-of-service attack, meaning I had been surviving on 3 hours of sleep, copious amounts of caffeine, and a level of stress that made my skin prickle. I'd been coding for 72 hours straight, and my bones ached with fatigue. I had been looking forward to today, not for a party. I'd told my family I was too tired for that, but for the simple, quiet celebration I'd requested. A home-cooked dinner and maybe a cake, just the 4 of us. I shuffled into the kitchen, my bare feet cold on the Italian marble I'd paid for. A note was taped to the stainless steel refrigerator I'd also paid for. It was in my mother's flowery, passive-aggressive script. "Samantha, darling, something suddenly came up, had to dash out. We'll be back in a few days. Don't work too hard, Mom." A few days, my birthday was today. A cold knot formed in my stomach. "Something suddenly came up" was my family's coded language for Victoria wanted something. I tried calling my mother, straight to voicemail. I tried my father, Benedict, voicemail. I tried Victoria. Her phone rang once and then clicked off. She had declined the call. That was the moment the irritation curdled into genuine hurt. I was exhausted, vulnerable, and it was my milestone birthday. They knew I'd been through hell at work, and they just left. I opened my laptop, my fingers moving on autopilot, driven by a dull, throbbing suspicion. I didn't have to look far. My sister, Victoria, for all her aspirations of being a digital icon, was remarkably stupid about digital privacy. She had blocked me on her main Instagram account, but she'd forgotten about the backup account I'd helped her set up when she'd been locked out of her primary one. I logged in, my breath hitched. The first post was a video, uploaded 3 hours ago. It was Victoria, filming herself with a selfie stick, walking through an airport terminal. "Miami-bound, baby," she squealed into the camera. She panned around. There, walking behind her, were my parents. My father, Benedict, was pulling a sleek new suitcase, one I recognized from my own Amazon order history, a gift I'd given him for Christmas. My mother, Jennifer, was right beside him, beaming and waving at Victoria's camera. The video was overlaid with obnoxious pop music and text. "Surprise trip for the Queen. Dad and Mom are the best." My 30th birthday, and my entire family had flown to Miami without me. I sank onto a kitchen stool, the one they'd complained wasn't aesthetically pleasing. My hands were shaking. It wasn't just that they'd left. It was the secrecy, the casual cruelty of the note, the declined call. They had planned this. They had packed, booked flights, and snuck out of the house like thieves, all to avoid spending my 30th birthday with me. I hit the call button on my father's contact. This time, shockingly, he picked up. The sound of waves and distant music immediately filled my ear. "What is it, Samantha?" he barked. He always sounded annoyed when I called. I saw Victoria's video," I stammered, my voice small. "You're in Miami." "Astute observation," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "But today it's my birthday," I whispered. The words felt pathetic even to me. There was a heavy sigh on his end. I could hear him say to someone, "It's Samantha, of course." Then his voice was back, cold and sharp. "Yes, we are aware. That's rather the point. Victoria needed a break, and frankly, we all did. A break from what? My voice cracked. You don't do anything. I wanted to have dinner. I told you I was tired. Exactly, Benedict snapped, and his next words were the ones that would sever the last thread of loyalty I had. You're always tired. You're always stressed, always staring at that blasted computer. We didn't want to waste our time on a clown. Your sister wanted to go to the beach, so we went to the beach. Don't be so dramatic. A clown. I wasn't a daughter. I wasn't the woman who signed the checks that paid for the mortgage on his house, the lease on his car, the very phone he was holding. I was a clown. A sad, tiresome joke they were happy to leave behind. The line was quiet. The rage that filled the space left by the shock was so pure and cold it was almost calming. My shaking stopped. My vision cleared. A clown, I repeated, my voice flat, devoid of all emotion. Well, if the shoe fits, he began. Then this clown doesn't want to spend money on you, I said. It wasn't a shout. It was a statement of fact, a line of code being executed. Benedict laughed. It was a short, ugly bark. Oh, stop it. Don't throw a tantrum, Samantha. It's unbecoming. You'll send Victoria her allowance and you'll pay the bills just like you always do. Don't be a child. We'll see you in a week. He hung up. I stared at the black screen of my phone. He was right about one thing. I wouldn't be a child. I would be an adult. I would be a CEO. I would be the owner of the house he was sleeping in, the leaser of the car he was driving, and the sole signatory on the bank accounts that funded his entire pathetic, parasitic life. The betrayal was worse than the insult, and the insult was the last one I would ever take from them. I sat there in the silent kitchen for a full 10 minutes. The numbness was a mercy, a protective layer of ice coating the raw burn of the betrayal. My father's laugh echoed in my head. You'll pay the bills, just like you always do. He saw me as an ATM, a boring, reliable, and slightly pathetic machine that spat out cash on command. A clown to be ridiculed, but a utility to be exploited. My gaze drifted from the tauntingly cheerful note on the fridge to the key rack by the door. On it hung the spare key fobs for the 2 cars in the driveway, a brand new BMW X5 for my father and a sleek Audi convertible for Victoria. Both leased. Both in my name. My eyes moved to the pile of mail on the counter I hadn't had time to sort. On top was the mortgage statement for this very house, a 5,000 square foot monstrosity my mother had to have. A mortgage, again, in my name. For years, I had justified it. I was successful. My studio, which I'd co-founded with 2 college friends, had created one of the most popular mobile games on the market. I was making more money than I ever dreamed I could. And what was the point of money if you couldn't share it with your family? I had bought this house so my parents could live comfortably after my father, Benedict, was forced into early retirement. He was fired for incompetence. I paid for Victoria's lifestyle blogger career, which consisted of her using my credit card to buy clothes she'd wear for one photo and then discard. I funded their vacations, their dinners, their cars, their lives. In return, I got dismissiveness. They called my job playing on the computer. When my studio hit 1 million downloads, my father asked if that meant I could finally get a real job in finance. They resented my long hours but demanded the fruits of my labor. We didn't want to waste our time on a clown. The ice around my heart didn't just crack, it sublimated. It turned into a vapor of pure, focused rage. I picked up my phone. My first call wasn't to a friend, it wasn't to cry. It was to my lawyer. David, I said when he picked up. David was the shark who had handled my studio's incorporation and contracts. He was expensive, precise, and had all the empathy of a sharpened razor. He was perfect. Sam, he answered, his voice already alert. You don't call this early unless it's a 5-alarm fire. What's the server status? The servers are fine. This is personal. I need you to draw up eviction papers. There was a brief pause. For a tenant. For my family. Benedict, Jennifer, and Victoria. From my property on Oakwood Drive. Another pause, this one longer. Sam, that's your registered address. It's my house. They are tenants at will who pay no rent. I am terminating that tenancy. I want it done by the book, ironclad, and effective at the earliest possible date the law allows. That's aggressive, David said, not judging, just calculating. It's 30 days' notice in this state. You're sure? I am also scheduling a voluntary repossession of 2 vehicles. I continued, my voice steady. A BMW X5 and an Audi A4. Both are leased in my name. I want the leasing company to pick them up as soon as possible. Can you facilitate that? Yes, he said. The calculation in his voice was gone, replaced by efficiency. They'll be thrilled to get them back early, especially if you're settling the lease terms. What else? The credit cards. I pulled up my banking app. There were 3 authorized users on my primary account: Benedict, Jennifer, and Victoria. I could see the charges from Miami already rolling in. A $1,200 charge at a designer sunglass store. A $600 dinner from last night. I can freeze them right now, I said. But I want to be smart about this, David. They're in Miami. If I freeze the cards, they'll just call me screaming, and I don't want to hear it. Not yet. So what's the play? He asked. I looked at the calendar. My family, in their arrogance, had told me their return date. We'll see you in a week. That meant they'd be back next Tuesday. The mortgage payment is due in 5 days, I said, thinking aloud. The car lease payments are due in 7. The credit card bill cycles in 9. This was the key. They had forgotten one crucial thing. They saw me as the clown, the tech nerd who just stared at a screen. They forgot that the clown had built an empire from code. They forgot that I understood systems. David, I said, a plan forming, cold and perfect. Don't send the eviction notice yet. Hold it. I want you to call the leasing company, but don't schedule the repossession until next Wednesday, day 9. 9 days from now, he confirmed. What about the credit cards? I'm not going to freeze them, I said. A bitter smile touched my lips. I'm going to lower the limit. I'll lower it to $50. Enough for a cup of coffee, but not enough for a hotel bill, not enough for a taxi to the airport, and certainly not enough for their return flights. Sam, David said, and I could hear the grudging respect in his voice. That is diabolical. They won't know until they're trying to check out. By then, they'll be stranded. Exactly, I said. They'll have to call me, they'll have to beg. And when they finally scrape their way home, the cars will be gone and the eviction notice will be on the door. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten who held the power. They thought the money was just there, a natural resource like air or water. They had forgotten I was the one who opened the tap, and I was about to weld it shut. Consider it done, David said. I'll have the notices drafted and ready to file. I'll coordinate with the leasing agency. You just say the word. The word is 9, I said. 9 days. I hung up and opened my banking app. I navigated to the card management page. I saw the 3 names, Benedict, Jennifer, Victoria. I clicked on each one. Card limit, $50,000. I pressed the edit button. The cursor blinked. I typed in $50. I clicked confirm. I did it again for my mother, $50. Confirm. I did it a final time for my sister, $50. Confirm. I closed my laptop. The house was still silent, but for the first time in my entire life, the silence felt like peace. It felt like power. The next 24 hours were a blur of hollow, aching clarity. I spent my 30th birthday alone, but I wasn't just wallowing. I was working. I dove back into the code for my game, my fingers flying across the keyboard with a renewed, almost frantic energy. Every line of code I fixed, every bug I squashed, felt like a small act of defiance. My work wasn't a clown's game, it was my fortress. It was the source of the power my family had taken for granted, and it would now be my weapon. As I worked, memories kept surfacing, each one stinging worse than the last. I remembered my college graduation. I had graduated summa cum laude in computer science. Benedict and Jennifer had attended, but my father spent the entire celebratory dinner complaining about the pointless degree. All that tuition, he'd scoffed, just to learn how to make cartoons. When I tried to explain the complexity of algorithm design, he'd waved his hand dismissively. Just get a real job, Samantha. Go to business school like your sister. Victoria, of course, never went to business school. She dropped out of community college after one semester, declaring that traditional education was stifling her creative essence. From that day on, her career as an influencer was born, and my parents had championed it. They lauded her bravery and vision. They'd found her vapid selfies and rambling, incoherent blog posts about living your truth to be profound. The hypocrisy was staggering. My sister's truth was built on a throne of my money, but I was the failure. The person who had cemented this narrative, the one who had truly orchestrated my family's disdain, was Benedict. My father. He was a man who defined himself by appearances. He'd had a mid-level management job at a bank and had lived his entire life pretending to be a titan of finance. When he was laid off for being, as a former colleague once told me, chronically obsolete, his ego couldn't take it. He'd reframed his firing as an early retirement and appointed himself the manager of the family's finances. This was a cruel joke, as there were no family finances. There was only my income. He demanded access to my accounts, insisting he could invest my play money and make it work for us. I'd refused, setting up the allowance and bill pay system instead. That refusal was the original sin. It was the moment I'd proven I didn't trust his superior intellect. His resentment had festered, poisoning my mother and sister against me. Jennifer, my mother, was his willing accomplice. Her entire self-worth was tied to being the wife of a successful man and the mother of a beautiful, popular daughter. My quiet, nerdy success didn't fit her script. I was the awkward, serious daughter who dressed for comfort, not for show. I didn't give her the social cachet that Victoria's superficial glamour did. So she enabled Benedict's narrative, always making excuses for him. "Your father is under a lot of stress, darling," she'd say, when he'd make a cruel joke at my expense. "He just wants what's best for you." But Victoria was the true antagonist, the puppet master behind the scenes. She was the one who had weaponized my father's ego and my mother's weakness. She was the one in Miami right now, posting a new photo every 30 minutes. I looked at her backup account again. There she was, posing in a bikini bought with my money on the balcony of a hotel, paid for with my money, with a cocktail in her hand, charged to my card. The caption, "Living my best life with the people who truly matter. Family over everything." The comments were fawning. "So brave, you deserve it." I scrolled and a new post appeared. It was a selfie of her and my father at a poolside bar. They were both laughing, holding up champagne flutes. But it was Benedict's appearance that caught my eye. He was wearing a new, ridiculously expensive-looking watch. It was a brand I knew he coveted but could never afford. A sick, cold dread settled over me. I opened my bank app. The $50 limit was holding. There were no new charges, but that watch, that wasn't a credit card purchase. I logged into the joint savings account I'd set up for my parents for emergencies. I'd put $50,000 in it 2 years ago and hadn't looked at it since, assuming it was their safety net. The balance was $1,420.15. I clicked the transaction history, withdrawal after withdrawal. Small ones at first, then larger. And then, 3 days ago, a single wire transfer for $25,000. It was coded personal investment. He hadn't just been managing my allowance. He had been systematically draining the emergency fund. That $25,000, that was the watch, and the flights, and the hotel. They hadn't even used my credit card for the initial booking. They had used my emergency savings. They had stolen from me directly to fund their vacation, all while planning to also use my credit cards for their spending money. The clown comment wasn't just an insult. It was a mission statement. They saw me as a fool, a mark, a bottomless pit of cash they were entitled to. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Victoria. "Hey, my card got declined buying a new dress. Super weird. I think you need to call the bank. It's embarrassing. Fix it." Not please, not can you, fix it. I stared at the text. The arrogance was breathtaking. They were spending stolen money and still demanding more. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten that the clown who built the game also built the firewall. They thought they were playing me, but I was the one who had designed the entire system. I typed back a single sentence. Sounds like a personal problem. I turned off my read receipts and put the phone on silent. The game had just changed. 9 days was too long. It was time to accelerate the timeline. Victoria's reply came 3 minutes later. A simple, I ignored it. Another minute. What does that mean? I ignored that too. Then the call, I let it ring until it went to voicemail. The message she left was a masterpiece of entitled rage. Samantha, I don't know what kind of stupid game you're playing, but I am at a boutique and my card just got declined again. It's humiliating. Dad is furious. He said to tell you to stop this childish nonsense and fix the card. We are on vacation and you are ruining it. Call me back, now. I didn't call back, I called David. David, change of plans. I'm listening. They didn't just use my credit cards. My father drained a $50,000 emergency fund. He wired $25,000 of it to himself 3 days ago. This isn't just betrayal anymore. That's theft. There was a sharp intake of breath on David's end. Okay, Sam, this moves from a civil matter to a criminal one. What do you want to do? I want them home, I said, my voice hard. I'm not waiting 9 days. I want them home and I want them out. And I want that $25,000 back. The watch, David said. The watch and whatever else he bought. The eviction notice will still take 30 days once served, David said. But the other two, we can move fast. You're the sole leaseholder on the cars. We can report them as misappropriated by unauthorized users and have them repossessed by morning. That will get their attention. Do it, I saw. Tonight. As for the money, David continued, that wire transfer is our clever trap. He moved it from a joint account to a personal account, I assume? I don't know, I said. I just see the withdrawal. I can find out. Give me the account details. If he moved it to an account in his name only, he's just committed felony theft. We can use that. We file a police report, and I present that report to him. It's leverage. He gives back the watch and any remaining cash, or he faces prosecution. I gave him the information. The clown had just turned into a strategist. I was no longer a passive victim. I was an active combatant. The fog of hurt was burning away, replaced by the adrenaline of the fight. I disconnected from David and immediately called the leasing agency for the BMW and the Audi. I identified myself, provided my lease numbers, and explained the situation. The vehicles are being operated by individuals who no longer have my permission, I stated calmly. They are currently parked at my residence. I am authorizing an immediate repossession. The agent was efficient. We can have 2 trucks there within 3 hours, ma'am. Will our drivers have access? I'll leave the spare key fobs on the back porch, I said. Excellent. Consider it done. My next call was to my bank. I didn't just want the $50 limit. I wanted the cards frozen. I am reporting 3 authorized user cards as stolen, I told the fraud department. Stolen by whom, ma'am? By Benedict, Jennifer, and Victoria, I said. I am in possession of my own card. They are in Miami, using the cards without my authorization after I explicitly told them to stop. That was all it took. Within 5 minutes, all 3 cards were permanently deactivated. They wouldn't just be declined. They would be confiscated if they were even attempted to be used. My phone was now exploding. A string of texts from Victoria, each more frantic than the last. My card was just declined again. It said invalid card. Mom's isn't working either. What did you do? Dad is trying to check into the hotel restaurant and his card was just cut in half by the waiter. He is screaming at them. You have humiliated us. Answer your phone, Samantha. Answer me. Answer me, you stupid clown. The clown insult had lost its sting. It was now just the desperate shriek of a parasite whose host had just developed an immune system. I made myself a cup of tea and sat on my back porch. I watched as, under the cover of darkness, 2 large tow trucks rolled silently down my street. I watched them back up into my driveway. I heard the clank of metal, the hydraulic whine, and then, one by one, the cars my family saw as status symbols. The cars I paid for were hoisted up and driven away into the night. The driveway was beautifully, wonderfully empty. The 9-day timeline was officially shattered. The endgame had begun. My phone rang. It was my father. I let it go to voicemail. The message was apoplectic. "Samantha, you have made a grave mistake," he roared, his voice thick with a narcissistic rage I knew so well. "You think this is funny? You think you can humiliate me? I am trying to pay for our hotel, and they are telling me the card is frozen due to fraud. You are a vindictive, pathetic child. You will turn those cards back on immediately, and you will wire $10,000 to my personal account to compensate for this humiliation. If you do not, you will regret it. You do not want to see what happens when you cross me." Poorly executed threats, obvious lies. He wasn't a titan. He was a bully, a paper tiger, and he had no idea I was already holding the match. I saved the voicemail. I forwarded it to David. I replied to my father's text with a simple 2-word message: "No." The next morning, the real panic began. The calls started at 6:00 a.m. They were no longer angry, they were terrified. This time it was my mother I decided to pick up. "Samantha, oh thank goodness, darling," she whimpered, her voice cracking. "Something is terribly wrong. Our cards are all stolen. Someone has stolen our card numbers. And the hotel? Samantha, they're threatening to kick us out. They say the card on file for the room was declined. You need to call them and give them a new number. Please, darling, Benedict is. He's frightening the staff." I let the silence stretch. I could hear Benedict roaring at someone in the background, something about incompetence and lawsuits. "They're not stolen, Mom," I said, my voice quiet. What do you mean?" "I mean I turned them off, all of them. The cards you were using, the ones I pay for, I deactivated them." The line went utterly silent. I could hear her sharp, shocked intake of breath. You did this," she whispered, as if the concept was too alien to grasp. "But why?" "Victoria told us you were just throwing a tantrum. Samantha, this isn't funny. Turn them back on. We're stranded. The clown doesn't want to spend moan." "I on you anymore, Mom," I said, repeating my words from the day before. What clown? What are you talking about?" "Ask Dad," I said. "He called me a clown. He said you all left because you didn't want to waste your 30th birthday on me. So I'm respecting that. I won't waste any more of my money on you." "That's not, you're twisting his words," she cried, the classic enabler's defense. "He was upset, you know how he gets, he didn't mean it. Samantha, you are family. You can't do this to us. We have no money. How are we supposed to get home?" "That sounds like a personal problem," I said, recycling my line to Victoria. "Samantha," she shrieked, the panic turning back to anger. "You are a horrible, ungrateful daughter. After everything we've done for you? Everything you've done for me. Or everything I've done for you? Like the house you live in, the cars you drive, the food you eat? We are your parents. We raised you. You owe us this." "My debt is paid," I said. "You should check your emergency fund, Mom. The one Dad has been stealing from for 2 years. The one he used to buy his new watch and this very vacation." I heard a gasp and a muffled, "What, Benedict? What is she?" Then the phone was wrenched away. "You little," Benedict's voice exploded in my ear. "You will not speak to your mother that way. You think you're clever? You've frozen our cards? Fine, we'll be home tomorrow. And when we get there, you and I are going to have a serious talk, young lady. You are going to learn respect." He was still trying to bully me. He still thought he was in charge. "I don't think you will be home tomorrow, Dad," I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. "And why is that?" he sneered. "Because your return tickets were booked on my credit card, the one I just canceled." The silence that followed was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of a narcissist's brain short-circuiting, the sound of his entire constructed reality collapsing. You wouldn't," he stammered. "I would," I said, "and I did. You stranded us. You left me on my birthday. You called me a clown. You stole $25,000 from my savings account. I think stranding you is a remarkably light sentence. Figure out your own way home." I hung up. I knew this was far from over. They would find a way back. Benedict would have to suffer the ultimate humiliation, swallowing his pride and using the last dregs of the stolen money to buy 3 last-minute, one-way tickets in economy class. The thought of him, stuffed into a middle seat next to a crying baby, brought me a grim sense of satisfaction. I spent the rest of the day in a flurry of activity. David called. "It's done," he said. The wire transfer was to a high-yield savings account in Benedict's name only. "It's textbook, Sam. I've filed a police report for theft. We don't have to press charges, but the report itself is now a public document. It's the perfect leverage." "Good," I said. "What about the cars?" "Both vehicles are secure in the leasing company's impound lot. The leases are terminated. You'll pay a penalty, but you're free of them." "Perfect." "They'll be home tomorrow," I told him. "I want to be there when they arrive, and I want you there with me." "You want to serve them the eviction notice in person?" David asked. "I want to watch their faces," I said, "when they realize the locks have been changed." "I'll clear my schedule," David said. The next evening, I sat in my living room, the living room I owned. A locksmith had been there an hour before. All new locks, all new deadbolts. David sat in the armchair opposite me, a professional witness, a thick file folder on his lap. At 7:14 p.m., a taxi pulled up, not a black car service. A battered yellow cab. Out tumbled my family. They looked wretched. Victoria's hair was a mess, her expensive white outfit was rumpled, and she was visibly crying. My mother looked gray and defeated. My father was radiating an aura of rage so black it was almost visible. They stormed up the walkway. Benedict jammed his key into the new lock. It didn't fit. He slammed his shoulder against the door. "Samantha, open this door right now." I stood up and walked calmly to the door. I opened it. They stood there, stunned into silence by my calm, by David's presence in a suit, by the fact that I wasn't crying or screaming. "Hello, Benedict," I said. "What is this?" he hissed. "Who is this man? Why did you change the locks?" "This is my lawyer, David," I said, "and I changed the locks because you no longer live here." I stepped aside. David stepped forward. "Mr. Benedict," David said, his voice polite and lethal. "On behalf of my client, Ms. Samantha, the sole owner of this property, I am serving you, Jennifer, and Victoria with this." He handed the thick envelope to my father. Benedict tore it open. His eyes scanned the first page. "Eviction, 30 days, this is a joke, you can't evict." "Us, we're your family," he roared, looking at me. "You are tenants at will," David said coolly. "And your tenancy has been terminated. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." "And the cars?" Victoria shrieked, finally finding her voice. "Where's my car? Where's my Audi?" "They've been repossessed," I said, looking her right in the eye. "The leases are terminated, they're gone." My car," she wailed, as if I'd just told her I'd amputated her arm. "My life is in that car, my clothes, my makeup. You can arrange to get your personal items from the impound lot," David said, checking his notes. "But you will not be getting the vehicle." It was then that my mother, Jennifer, finally broke. She collapsed onto the front steps, sobbing. "Samantha, please," she wept. "You can't do this. We have nowhere to go, we have nothing, you've taken everything." "No, Mom," I said, my voice shaking just slightly, the last ember of my old hurt flaring. "I didn't take anything from you. I just stopped giving you everything of mine. There's a difference." "You ungrateful." Benedict started, lunging for me. David stepped between us, holding up a hand. "I wouldn't do that, Mr. Benedict. Get out of my way, this is my house." "It is not your house," David said. "And if you assault my client, I will have you arrested, which brings me to my second point." He pulled another document from his folder. "This," he said, "is a copy of a police report, filed this morning. For the theft of $25,000 from Ms. Samantha's savings account, wired to a personal account in your name." Benedict's face went from puce to sheet white. He looked at the document, he looked at me. You called the police?" he whispered. The rage was gone, replaced by a new, unfamiliar emotion. "Fear. You stole from me," I said. "It was an investment, a loan, I was going to pay you back." "Then you can pay me back right now," I said. "The watch, the one you're wearing, give it to me." He instinctively covered his wrist. "No, this was a gift." "It was bought with stolen money," David said. "My client is offering you a deal. You return the watch and the remaining balance of the $25,000, which we've calculated to be just over $4,000, and she will inform the district attorney that she does not wish to press charges. You refuse, and you can explain your investment to a judge." Benedict stared at me. His eyes, for the first time, were pleading. He was broken. The bully, stripped of his power, was just a pathetic old man. Slowly, his hands shaking with rage and humiliation, he unclasped the $20,000 watch and handed it to me. "And the money," I said. It's in my account," he mumbled. "Then you can transfer it right now," I said, holding out my phone, "or we can wait for the police. Your choice." He took the phone, his fingers trembling, and transferred the money. "Good," I said, taking the phone back. "Now you have 30 days, get off my property." I closed the door. I turned the deadbolt. The lock sliding into place was the most final, most liberating sound I had ever heard. The screaming started then, a chorus of rage and begging and threats. I turned to David. "Thank you." "My pleasure, Sam," he said. I walked to the living room window and watched as my former family, the 3 people who had been the center of my life, huddled on the curb, defeated and broken, calling for another taxi. The circus was over. The clown had finally left the building. The 30 days that followed were a masterclass in desperation. The texts and voicemails were a relentless barrage, cycling through the 5 stages of grief, often in a single message. First came the denial. "Samantha, this has gone on long enough. Stop this joke. We'll be at a hotel. Let us know when you're ready to be an adult and let us come home." Then the anger. A 10-minute voicemail from Benedict detailing how I was a sociopath and how he would ruin me, though the threats were vague and powerless. Then the bargaining, a tearful call from Jennifer. "If you let us come back, I'll make sure Dad apologizes. We can be a family again, we can go to therapy. Please, Samantha, we have no money, we're living in a horrible weekly rate motel." Then depression, a text from Victoria. "You've ruined my life. My followers are all asking where I am. I have nothing, I hope you're happy." And finally, a brief, pathetic flicker of acceptance. A text from Benedict. "I'll need help moving some of the heavier furniture." I replied to that one. "No, you won't. You can take your clothes and personal items. The furniture stays. It's mine. I paid for it." This, of course, sent them straight back to anger. They had no leverage. They had no power. They were, for the first time in their lives, facing the consequences of their own actions. My lawyer, David, handled all communication. He had arranged a moving day for them, the 30th and final day of the notice, at 10:00 a.m. He informed them they would have 2 hours to remove their personal belongings, and he and a sheriff's deputy would be present to ensure a smooth, orderly transition. The day arrived. It was a bright, clear morning. I wasn't at the house. I had no desire to see them. I was at my studio in a meeting with my team, planning our next expansion. My phone was on silent. David had it covered. At 10:00 a.m., as I was storyboarding a new game level, they arrived at the house. David later recounted the scene to me with professional detachment. They pulled up in a U-Haul van, which Benedict had apparently been forced to rent. The sheriff's deputy's car, parked conspicuously in the driveway, deterred any immediate outburst. My mother, Jennifer, immediately burst into tears. Victoria, hiding behind sunglasses, refused to make eye contact with anyone and marched inside, heading for her room. Benedict, however, tried one last power play. He marched into the living room, pointed at the 75-inch OLED TV, and said to the moving men he'd hired, "Take that, and the sofa." David stepped forward. "I'm afraid not, Mr. Benedict. As stated in our correspondence, you are to remove personal items only: clothing, toiletries, computers, and any items you can prove you purchased with your own funds." "I paid for this," Benedict roared, slapping the TV. "Can you provide a receipt?" David asked politely. Benedict's face flushed. "It was a gift from her?" "Then it was a gift to her house," David said. "It is a fixture. It stays. Please confine yourselves to your bedrooms." The humiliation was total. For the next 2 hours, they were forced to pack up their lives in suitcases and trash bags, just as if they had been roommates, not family. They had to walk past the beautiful furniture, the art, the kitchen appliances, all of it mine, all of it staying. The true climax, however, wasn't the eviction itself. It was what happened at 11:45 a.m., just as they were carrying the last of their bags to the van. A sleek, black town car pulled up to the curb. Out stepped a woman in a sharp business suit holding a clipboard. Benedict, Jennifer, and Victoria all stopped and stared. "Can I help you?" Benedict asked, trying to puff himself up. "I'm here for the viewing," the woman said, checking her watch. The 12:00 p.m. appointment for Ms. Samantha, the owner. My family froze. A viewing? Jennifer stammered. Yes, the woman said, all business. The house just went on the market this morning. It's a gorgeous property. My client is very eager to see it. This was my final move, the one I had come to watch. I had been sitting in my own car down the street. I pulled up and got out, walking toward the real estate agent I had hired. Deanne, thanks for being so prompt, I said, ignoring my family completely. Samantha, Diane, the agent, smiled warmly. Of course, let's show this beautiful place. My family stared at me, their faces a mask of disbelief and horror. You're selling it? Victoria whispered, her voice cracking. Our home? It was never your home, Victoria, I said, finally turning to face them. It was my house. You were just guests, and your stay is over. But where will we go? Jennifer wept, clutching a box of shoes. I don't know, Mom, I said, and the truly terrifying part was that I didn't care. The love I'd had for them, the sense of obligation, had been so thoroughly burned out of me that all I felt was a cold, vast emptiness. You can't just erase us, Benedict yelled, his face contorted. I am your father. A father wouldn't call his daughter a clown, I said, my voice cutting through the air. A father wouldn't steal from her. A father wouldn't abandon her on her 30th birthday. You stopped being my father when you decided I was just your bank. I looked at the three of them, huddled on the sidewalk next to a pile of bags, homeless, carless, and penniless. They were no longer giants of my childhood. They were just people, pathetic, greedy, weak people. Your 2 hours are up, I said, looking at my watch. The U-Haul is blocking the driveway. Please leave. The new owners will want to see the garage. My father looked like he wanted to say something else. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He had nothing left. No threats, no insults, no leverage. I had taken it all. Wordlessly, he turned, got into the driver's seat of the U-Haul, and slammed the door. Jennifer and Victoria scrambled in after him. I stood on the lawn of my house, with my lawyer and my real estate agent, and watched as the truck pulled away. I watched it turn the corner, and just like that, 30 years of toxicity, of being the unloved, unappreciated workhorse, drove out of my life forever. I turned to Diane. Shall we? I said, a small, genuine smile on my face. I think your client is going to love the kitchen. The house sold in 4 days. The market was hot, and the property, scrubbed clean of my family's presence, was beautiful. I took a significant profit, which I immediately rolled into 2 places. A new, sleek, and much smaller downtown condo for myself, and a massive investment back into my own company. My clown's game had its most profitable quarter to date. The patch I'd been working on during my birthday week was a massive success, and our user base doubled. I promoted 2 of my junior developers, gave the entire team a raise, and took my co-founders out for a dinner that cost more than my family's entire disastrous Miami trip. We celebrated our success, my success. The downfall of my former family was as swift as it was predictable. Without my income, their world simply ceased to exist. David, my lawyer, ensured the final details were handled with clinical precision. The watch I'd taken from Benedict was sold, the money put into a trust for my own future. The police report for the theft was officially closed, with the note, restitution made. I didn't want him in jail, I wanted him irrelevant. Victoria's influencer career evaporated overnight. Without new clothes, new trips, and new restaurants to post about, her content dried up. Her followers vanished. The last I heard, she was working a retail job at the mall, the very place she used to sneer at. Jennifer and Benedict, with no assets and no income, were forced to move into a tiny, rundown apartment in the worst part of town. Benedict, I heard through the grapevine, was trying to find a job. A 60-year-old man with a 10-year gap on his resume and an ego the size of a planet was not. It turned out, a hot commodity in the job market. The reconciliation I half expected, the tearful apology, never came. Instead, about a month after the eviction, I received a long, rambling email from my mother. It was not an apology. It was a list of demands. She accused me of abandoning them and hoarding my wealth. It ended with the line, "Your father is willing to forgive you if you buy us a new, suitable house and reinstate our allowances." I didn't even bother to reply. I set up a filter on my email. All messages from them now go directly to a folder labeled trash, unread. My 30th birthday was long past, but I decided to celebrate it properly. I booked a solo trip to Japan, something I had always wanted to do. For 2 weeks, I explored Tokyo, hiked in Kyoto, and ate the most incredible food of my life. I didn't check my work email once. On the final night of my trip, I was sitting in a quiet bar overlooking the Tokyo skyline. The city lights glittered below me like a sea of diamonds. My phone buzzed. It was a new number, but I knew who it was. I looked at the preview of the text message. "Samantha, please, I am begging you. Your father is sick, we have no." I didn't read the rest. I took a sip of my drink, the ice clinking in the glass. I blocked the number. I looked back out at the view. The betrayal, the anger, the years of hurt, they were still there, but they were no longer a storm inside me. They were a scar, a faded, painless reminder of a battle I had fought and won. My father had called me a clown. Perhaps I was. I had been a jester, juggling their finances, their egos, and their entire lives, all for their entertainment. But the show was over. The clown had quit. And for the first time in my life, I was finally, completely, and gloriously at peace.